Farmers note reliable trading partners matter. Canada and Mexico are two of the best grain buyers, and that didn't happen by accident. It's because of a trade agreement signed by President Donald Trump in his first term, commonly known as USMCA. That agreement isn't guaranteed to last. Today on Kernels, Leslie McNibb, Vice President of Public Policy at NCGA, breaks down what's at stake for farmers and why the future of USMCA matters. It's all coming up next on Kernels. The United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, is one of the most important trade deals for American agriculture. Signed by President Donald Trump in his first term, it's helped to provide stable markets and reliable customers for farmers right here in North America. But right now, there's talk in Washington about renegotiating it or even walking away from it altogether. That kind of uncertainty creates real problems for farmers. Leslie, help our viewers understand what's really happening right now.
If we take a little trip down memory lane, I think we all can remember how hard we fought with corn and the broader agriculture industry really leading the way to preserve our and expand our trading relationship with Mexico and Canada. So prior to the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, of course, we had NAFTA. And so we had free trade since 1995, and U.S. agriculture was one of the primary beneficiaries of really integrating North American trade. When President Trump came in his first term, he really wanted to re-examine USMCA for concerns unrelated to the agriculture industry, and his administration set about renegotiating an agreement that really strengthened the relationship between our three nations. Ever since USMCA entered into force in the summer of 2020, we have seen in the corn industry and really across agriculture, we've seen our exports increase. We've seen, the new agreement, USMCA, really perform even better for agriculture. Built into USMCA was a sunset provision that would bring the three countries together after 6 years. So that has to happen by July, this coming summer, 2026, to take a look at the performance of the agreement and say, is this something that we want to continue with? And if all three parties agree to extend the agreement, it would be extended for an additional 16 years. Or they could move to a period of annual consultations, or that they could opt to withdraw, and that would wind down the agreement over 10 years. So we're at a major inflection point. President Trump has cast some doubt on what he may do with respect to USMCA or how the U.S. may respond during this review period. And we've certainly been watching USTR's, our Ambassador Greer's statements very closely as his agency has set out to begin its review process of USMCA's performance. So this is a really critical time for agriculture to make clear that this agreement is important and we need it to stick around.
Well, we saw this coming because, like you said, it was written into the USMCA that there was this sunset or a time when we could either extend it or renegotiate or review. I don't know what you want to call it, but right. Somehow there was a trigger that said July 2026 is an important date. And so there is a coalition that has been built in DC, ag organizations all working together, urging the president to rethink opening the USMCA. So we don't have to reopen it, right? We could just extend it as is, which we like because we benefit from that. So who's involved with that message, and really what are they saying to the White House?
Well, that's true, Tad. I mean, we don't have to reopen it, and ideally, like if NCGA ruled the world, we would like the government to say, yeah, let's extend it. We don't need to reopen this agreement. I remember I was the trade lobbyist for National at the time, and we all worked really hard to get this agreement passed, get it ratified with pretty large bipartisan margins in Congress. But it was a really big effort. And at the time we said, oh, we're never going to take these trade agreements for granted again. And I think that, we may be eating our words a little bit. So when the administration started started this review process at the end of 2025, and CGA's president, Jed Bauer, testified and weighed in on all the reasons why USMCA has been so good for the corn industry. And there were a lot of other ag representatives that weighed in as well. And there were a lot of other sectors, industry sectors that, either provided their feedback, some in favor of extending the agreement, some opposed to continuing the agreement, and some seeking changes. And so we hear from the administration about things that it is targeting, that the trade ambassador is targeting for changes. And a lot of those things fall outside of the realm of agriculture. And some are continuations of improvements that they made the first go around. So things in the labor sphere, things in different manufacturing sectors like automobiles, rules of origin, digital trade, like those are some of the key areas of focus.
I remember currency manipulation being the big discussion points there. I was like,
Mhm.
doesn't every country manipulate currency?
And and there are also, I think we've learned so much about how this trade agreement is performing, and also we've learned so much about our supply chains and seen industries adjust supply chains in the face of COVID, and in the face of these shifting trade alliances. And so I think that there are some lessons learned, certainly. But again, we're saying, let's not reopen this agreement. And if there are other ways to make marginal improvements, like let's pursue those. We know, the dairy industry, for example, has some changes that it would still like to see made. But dairy is a big part of this coalition. So NCGA is leading ag coalition for USMCA with, I think, 38 other major national farm and commodity groups that are all banding together to really tell the story of how successful this agreement has been for agriculture and how critical that secure, stable relationships with Mexico and Canada are for the farm economy.
Well, I think, we work in coalitions a lot in DC, but having NCGA leading this coalition, really appreciate the work of you and your team there, and representing grain farmers' interest as well. But speaking of that, though, let's say that it did get reopened and we renegotiated and it was weaker than it is today. What's the real world implications for grain farmers? Price differences, demand loss, what are we actually talking about?
Well, Tad, we have benefited from zero tariff provisions. We've had zero tariff access into Mexico and Canada for a really long time. And that would not be guaranteed if this agreement were to fall apart. Particularly, this administration's use of tariffs often, it could invite reciprocal tariffs. So that would make corn into Mexico or ethanol into Canada less competitive. Potentially, we could see, Brazil, for example, erode some of our market share. We also are leveraging USMCA together, the three countries together. We represent 30% of the world's economy. So we're using it for our regional global competitiveness as well. So I think that we would definitely see an impact on price and overall global competitiveness if we lost our top export markets. I mean, Mexico took 40% of our corn exports last year. Before USMCA, it was about 25%. So it's really, there is no replacement market for Mexico for corn right now. So we would definitely see a hit in the corn markets. And it just wouldn't be easy to backfill that.
To help put this into perspective, I saw a report from, our economist, Krista Swanson. She put it this way that, of all of the corn exported, 40% of that goes to Mexico. Of all of the ethanol exported, 40% of that goes to Canada. So I had never heard anybody put it into a percentage like that of all of our exports of corn and ethanol. These two countries matter that much. So hard to think that we wouldn't be negatively impacted, even if a small tweak or weakening of USMCA were to occur. Am I overreacting?
No, you're not overreacting. I mean, it was when, President Trump said he was going to pull out of NAFTA in his first term, it was like DEFCON 5 for us. Yeah. And I think that that's where we would be again if we were to lose the security around this agreement. I mean, our industry and our partners at the U.S. Grains and Bioproducts Council have invested for years, for decades, in building relationships, but also integrating our infrastructure, how we address, products moving across borders, phytosanitary standards, biotechnology. I mean, there are provisions in USMCA beyond just the duty-free access, but changes to how we address rules and regulatory barriers in a way that enables seamless trade and resolution of disputes, which we've used very successfully to address a potential barrier we were facing for biotech corn in Mexico. And that's a state-of-the-art type of provision that we'd love to see work into any future trade agreement. So there are a lot of really important, pieces of USMCA that are benefiting the corn industry, and we'd be at a real loss without it.
So the campaign is starting, right? We have a coalition
Tomorrow.
built. We're creating a campaign. By the time this airs, it's probably going to be already launched. There's going to be lots of different things happen between now and July. What are some of those key moments that farmers should be watching for as we go through the next several months?
Sure, Tab, that's a great question. So, as I mentioned, we began the process of providing feedback formally from NCGA to the U.S. Trade Representative's office. There are some other key moments. So, the U.S. government will publish a Federal Register notice 270 days before the July 1st deadline for review. There will be a hearing, and there will be a report to Congress. So there will be opportunities at each of those milestones for national corn and for other commodity groups, state commodity groups to weigh in. But I think that, we shouldn't wait for those opportunities. Really, the time to engage is now, to tell the story of why USMCA is a success and why, especially in today's farm economy, we need every single market. And this is, this agreement represents, as you said, two growing markets, right? We're not advocating to just stand in place, but we have seen tremendous growth both in access to Canada, access to Mexico, and there's still more opportunity on the table. You mentioned ethanol, perfect example. There's a real opportunity to increase ethanol use and our access into Mexico, for example. But we need these agreements to really incentivize that continued growth and cooperation. So the time to engage is now. We're very grateful to have Ohio Corn and Wheat as a partner. You guys work so hard on on behalf of your farmer members, and we're very lucky to partner with you. And, we'll keep fighting for this, but we need farmers to really engage.
Yeah, I think that's the message to all the Kernels listeners and viewers, that there's nobody else that's going to do the talking for us, and we can't rely on anyone else. We got to have our voices heard. So the campaign that's ongoing now to make your voice heard, we need to have everyone take part in that. So Leslie, just want to say thanks. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. I appreciate what your team does for us every day. Thanks for joining us on Kernels.
Thanks, Chad. One last plug to visit agforusmca.com, please. Resources, action alerts, that'll all kick off in the next couple of days. So I encourage farmer members to take some time and check that out and make your voices heard.
That's great. Ag for say it again.
Ag for USMCA.
Ag for USMCA. Gotcha. Nice. Yep. All right. We're going to be promoting that loud and proud.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tad.
Coming up, how Ohio Corn and Wheat is helping ag leaders step up and make their mark.
We've all got one. Tucked behind the desk, above the tool bench, hanging in the hallway. It doesn't matter if you farm 40 acres or 4,000. It's yours. It's where you raised your kids, fixed what broke, and prayed for rain. But every acre tells a story, and we know that patch of land is more than just a photo on the wall. It's your life's work. It's your homegrown legacy.
Farming isn't just a job. It's the foundation of life. Farmers feed us, fuel our future, and pass down traditions built on hope and hard work. At Farm Credit Mid-America, we know farming is more than a profession. It's a legacy. That's why we stand shoulder to shoulder with farmers, offering agricultural loans, insurance, and education. Because we're not just here for farmers, we're owned by them. Farming matters, and we're proud to honor it every day.
At Ohio Corn and Wheat, we take leadership development seriously. That's why each year we host the Emerging Leaders Academy. It's a hands-on 2-day program designed to help farmers and ag professionals get more involved and take the next step into leadership, whether that's serving on the association board, our corn checkoff board, or the wheat checkoff board. Joining me today are 2 alumni of that program, as well as 2 of our newest board members, John Hummel and Derek Snyder. Thanks for being with us on Kernels, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Derek, let's start with you. Now that you've been on board, you've been on our board for a few months and have gone through the Emerging Leaders program. What surprised you most about stepping into leadership role at Ohio Corn and Wheat?
Well, growing up on our family farm, my grandparents and parents always encouraged us to be involved in organizations. So the farm was always members of, the commodity groups, Farm Bureau, Ohio Cattlemen's, Ohio Soy, and of course, Ohio Corn and Wheat. So now being able to take a leadership role within Ohio Wheat as a checkoff board member, really putting all those pieces together, understanding, how a checkoff works, why it's important, what we do to help Ohio agriculture and Ohio wheat growers, by increasing demand and making sure we're producing a good product for the whole world to take advantage of. I think it puts everything together to see how it all works together over time.
So appreciate that, John. Similarly, for farmers watching who've never really been part of a program like this, what really happens during those 2 days?
Yeah, Tad. So we just really went through basically all the what the nuts and bolts of how these boards work together, how they go commingle, how we can fit into them, how they benefit the Ohio farmer. And it was really interesting to see all that, along with some other natural board just qualities and side notes that help a board member get prepared for a meeting and whatnot. That's basically what the gist of it was.
Yeah, because we don't have county programs at Ohio Corn and Wheat or large committees for members to serve on, it's really difficult to get a sense of what would it be like if I joined one of these boards. And so this program really is created to simulate, if you were on our board, here's what life would be like. Here are the issues you'd be dealing with and those type of things. And so appreciate both of you taking time away. But that's the next question. Both of you, the thought of taking 2 days away from your farm, away from your job, and spending it, with Ohio Corn and Wheat, it's sometimes you're thinking, is this going to be worth it? So now that it's behind you, was it worth it?
And one of my favorite quotes is, the world is ran by those that show up. So by showing up and getting engaged, you're understanding how, again, have John mentioned, everything works together. Being a new board member, I realized there were 3 different boards, but now understanding how each board, as John says, works together, what their roles and responsibilities are within the organization, as well as what their roles and responsibilities are for the Ohio farmer that either pays their membership dues or has funds come from their grain for the checkoff. I think it really puts it all together, and taking that time away from the farm was well spent.
A lot of times we hear the term of, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And these boards gives us a seat at the table, and it's really important. I mean, we've got the huge E15 thing going on right now on the corn side of things, and having a seat at the table. I think the 2 days that we spent there, it was well worth it, getting us prepped as new board members, and also, like Derek said, learning how everything works. And yeah, it was time well spent, especially in January. It was cold. Not a whole lot happening on the farms on the grain side of things, but it was well worth it to meet some new people from around the state, plus to get to learn, the nuts and bolts of how Ohio Corn and Wheat operates.
Well, we do it in February on purpose so that we stay away from farming season. But if you were talking to a farmer who's always kind of been interested in leadership but never really quite knew what the first step is to take, what's your advice to them as leaders? Start with you, John.
Yeah, Derek and I, of course, aren't real new to leadership with being involved with Farm Bureau and a few other boards, but it's like Derek said, it's showing up. It's being part of the community that helps your fellow farmer, and you can really do some good there. And as young guys getting involved, I feel it's extremely important to step up and be in these roles. First of all, and we heard in our board orientation and in the emerging leader program, the amount of knowledge we can consume from being on these boards before it hits the mainstream media, really even. And I really get excited about that, because when we can take that cutting edge knowledge back to our farms, it's going to help us in the long run. Plus, being active, you just get to talk to so many different people, build so many different relationships that can that can help you, in your business flourish. So,
Derek, what's your advice?
Well, as you mentioned, Tad, with this being the Emerging Leaders Conference, it's really a great test drive for those individuals that want to become involved in these different types of boards that may not understand what they do or how they work. So by having this 2-day free test drive, you can understand, okay, is this some type of organization I truly am interested in? I understand how it works now, but is it something I want to grow and develop in my leadership role by being involved in? By being engaged in this 2-day event, this Emerging Leaders Conference, you can understand, okay, this is something that gets my wheels turning. And as John said, help benefit us to take information back to our own family farms, as well as share that knowledge with other Ohio farmers to understand what Ohio Corn and Wheat does in order to improve our bottom line as producers.
Yeah, two things I'll just add to this. An emerging leader has no age. They could be somebody that's farmed for 20 years and just now deciding, I kind of like to volunteer some of my time and find out if Ohio Corn and Wheat is where I'd like to do it. The Emerging Leaders Program is certainly a place for them as well. Or if you're new to farming, it doesn't matter. But it's certainly not just a young farmer event. It's one for any farmer out there. And the second thing is, even if you don't decide to join our boards, there is a social aspect to this as well. And so farmers getting to rub elbows with other farmers, building your network. John mentioned the relationships, and that matters a lot, I think, in farming. And sometimes we just don't have an opportunity to get to know other farmers. This is one of those things. So I hope that both of you found that enjoyable as well.
absolutely.
Anybody looking to join our Emerging Leaders Program can do so by going to ohiocornandwheat.org.
Ohio Corn and Wheat, working on behalf of farmers.
Ohio Corn and Wheat has some vital roles in helping the profitability of Ohio corn farmers.
Ohio Corn and Wheat's role in creating the next generation of successful farmers is bringing those farmers together.
It's important for farmers all across Ohio to get involved with Ohio Corn and Wheat, just because they are farmer-led and it lets our voice be heard.
Experience the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association. Join or renew your membership now at ohiocornandwheat.org.
Well, that's a wrap for this edition of Kernels. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you always stay up to date. You can also follow us on Facebook and our other social media channels for more great content and conversations.